Well, since I talked and made a video about Face the Night, the next logical step seems to be to talk about Tsukihime. With how Tsukihime was the first visual novel that Type Moon made, as well as Tsukihime, despite its age and not having a budget like Face the Night, still really does hold up to Face the Night. And like Face the Night, Tsukihime has also gave way to a bunch of sequels and side stories, with there being a sequel called Kagetsu Tohya that's also a visual novel, the whole Melty Blood series, which is a fighting game spin-off series that revolves around the Tsukihime characters. There's also a remake on the Tsukihime visual novel being created by, of course, Type Moon, though there's not really much information on that, well, not yet anyway, as well as other works. Though it does seem like Tsukihime doesn't have as many adaptations as Face the Night does. I mean, there's a manga that I heard is pretty good, and that's basically it. Yeah, no other adaptation. There's certainly no anime adaptation that's created by JC's staff called Tsukihime Lunar Legends that ran for 12 episodes but turned out so bad that it's laughable to be even called an adaptation due to how they butchered the story characters, as well as ruining everything that made the visual novel so good. Yes, there is certainly no anime adaptation for Tsukihime. Anyway, without further delay, let's start this discussion about why Tsukihime, the visual novel, has held up as much as it does. Well, at least discuss why I at least think so. Hello, I'm Peter4780 and welcome to my review of Tsukihime. Now, like my Face the Night review, I'll probably start off discussing the gameplay, since in a visual novel, the gameplay is usually basic and not really the focus of most visual novels. With that said, Tsukihime does play out like most, if not all, visual novels, with you progressing the story by reading through it, and when you get to a specific point, you will have a choice that will either let you progress through the story, or get Shiki really screwed with him dying if you pick the wrong choice. Anyway, let's now discuss how the game is structured and see if it works for the visual novel format. It's structured similarly to Face the Night, with you being able to progress down 5 different routes in Tsukihime with the specific choices you make through the visual novel. Though you can only gain access to the far side of the moon route at first, which are Arcuid and Ciel's route, with you gaining access to the near side of the moon route after completing either Arcuid or Ciel's route. Though there is one character route that is locked till you complete one near side route and one far side route. And the far side routes are namely Akaha, Hisui, and Kohaku's route. And yes, I know I'm mispronouncing those names very badly. I apologize. Though I do think that this visual novel works better if you play through a specific order, which is to say, playing first through Arcuid's, then Ciel's, and Akaha's, Hisui's, and then Kohaku's last. The structure overall works well. The choice system is pretty straightforward with no other mechanics to worry about like in Face the Night's Affinity system, with you being able to freely progress the story by simply making the right choices, and if you make the wrong one, you just need to reload a previous save to make the right one without having to worry about having to start from the beginning. Though I still recommend playing with a guide, and I think the requirement to unlock the near side route while completing the far side route is ideal, as I think that the far side route, more specifically Arcuid's route, is a good introductory route, and the teach me CA senpai scenes that you get from getting a bad ending does do a good job of telling what you need to do to progress the story. All the structure is simple but effective. I didn't really see a flaw with it, gameplay wise. Then I got into a conversation with my friend that did tell me that the structure probably doesn't work as well as it could, since you do need to play this visual novel in a specific order in order to get a full impact of some scenes. And yeah, story wise it doesn't work all that well. Because in order to get the full impact of some scenes and specific routes, you do need to play it through a specific order. So yeah, in the end, the structure does need be a bit more rigid in terms of you getting the full experience of reading through the different routes. But overall, the structure works well enough, I think. It's just that you need to know beforehand which route you have to read through first in order to get the full impact of the story. Now we get to talk about the presentation. Now, Tsukihime was originally released in 2000 as a doujin visual novel, which basically means it was a self-published work and that the game barely had a budget. You can really tell this was the case when you see the production values of Tsukihime, or the lack of it. It really shows. Now, I don't think the presentation overall is bad per se, just aged considerably, especially if you are playing Tsukihime after Fate Stay Night. And by the way, if you do plan on reading both visual novels, I would recommend Tsukihime first, then Fate Stay Night. Back to talking about the presentation. Visually, I think the character artwork is okay. Each character got distinct, if simple design, and you can tell each character apart pretty easily through the design themselves. But like I said, the character artwork have aged with how it's drawn. And the same thing can be said about the anime stills. The background itself can also be jarring since it's not drawn and can sometimes clash with the character artwork, and the background themselves don't really stand out as well. In terms of the music itself, there are some emo tracks I remember, and I probably do say that the Menokane Somber tracks really does stand out and really works well when they're used, as well as the emotional tracks that play in the visual novel that's really poignant. Well, track 7 to be precise, and that track is probably my favorite track in the visual novel. And if you have played Fate Stay Night before going to Tsukihime, you probably might already recognize that the main theme in Tsukihime is in Fate Stay Night whenever the TV was turned on during Fate Stay Night, in the visual novel at least. But getting off track, I'll probably say one of the cons to the music is that there isn't much variety of music. So yeah. But I think the sound design itself is done well, with the visual novel knowing when is the time to play the right music at the right time in the story, but also knowing when not to play music to build up the suspense and atmosphere of the situation, which really works well. And this probably goes without saying, the visual novel doesn't have voice acting in it. And now we get to the heart and soul of a visual novel, and that is the story and characters. Story-wise, we follow Tonoshiki, an everyday high school student who was in a near-fatal accident when he was younger that now caused him the anemia that he has now. But the accident also strangely gave him a strange ability, which now allows him to see various lines and points on basically everything from living objects to inanimate stuff, basically, with him being able to effectively destroy anything by cutting through the lines and points with a sharp object. He also met his mysterious sensei, whom he grows a fast and fond connection to during the time he first discovered his new mysterious powers. And it is a sensei that not only have given him important life lessons that he still takes to heart to this very day, well, the day where the visual novel starts, but she also bestows upon Shiki a unique pair of glasses that would allow him to unsee the line and points, so that the burden of having his mysterious and deadly power would lessen and allow him to lead a normal everyday life, but also warns him of the magnitude of his power and how it shouldn't be used lightly. Shortly afterwards, Shiki is then moved into the Armia family, which is a branch from the Tonos, since he was apparently seen unfit to be the head of the family due to his anemia that he now has. Anyway, the story officially starts when Shiki's father passes away, and Shiki is now called back to his old home by his sister Akaha, where he'll have to adjust living like a Tono. And let's just say that things will not be so simple for Shiki with the strange events that has been happening in the town recently, which will basically involve him. Anyway, in talking about the story and characters of Tsukihime, we would need to talk about the different routes the game has, since this is a visual novel. There are 5 different routes in the game that each have a focus on different characters, with those respective characters being Arcuid, CL, Akaha, Hisui, and Kohaku. Each of these character routes can be categorized into 2 sections, since there is a focal point for some of the stories, with each route even building upon the other. There is the near side of the moon route, which includes Arcuid and CL's route, and then the far side of the moon route, which involves Akaha, Hisui, and Kohaku. Now let's first talk about the near side of the moon route. The near side of the moon route, which is namely Arcuid and CL's route, does serve as the introductory route of the visual novel, like the Fate route of Fate Stay Night, with Arcuid's route introducing most of the characters you see in the visual novel, as well as having a lot of world building to it in regards to the supernatural elements that are in the visual novel, which revolves around the dead apostolites, the true ancestors a bit, and all the other entities that are involved with them, with CL's route effectively expanding on what Arcuid route presents. And the near side of the moon route does mainly focus on the dead apostates, with how it's affecting both the town and how it's connected to the serial killing that's been happening in the town and our main character, as well as how the dead apostate revolves around the 2 heroines of the near side of the moon route, which are Arcu and CL respectively again. I think these 2 routes does a great job of introducing the world of Tsukihime to the audience, with the overlying world of Tsukihime being both familiar to people who are familiar to various supernatural elements, but still also be a bit unique in how these supernatural elements work within Tsukihime lore, which does make the world very interesting, with the atmosphere that exudes from the narrative also being really engaging, from being very tense and creepy during some parts of the story, to the more relaxed tone that other parts of the story can bring as well. But the intense and creepy atmosphere doesn't take it too far, I feel, that alienates readers. Instead, I think it encourages them to continue on the story to find out what's going to happen next. Accompanying the atmosphere, I do think that the action scenes that does happen in these routes, few as they are also extremely well done and get you sucked in the story along with the atmosphere, with the action scenes being written very intense, very gritty, and lack of a better word, seems very real. You really do feel each action that a character does in the story. You really do feel the pain that each character feel when they do get hurt. And overall, the way how the action scenes are written is really well done. The characters are also fantastic, albeit the 2 routes does have a focus on both Arcuid and CL's, but the other characters still come off as interesting and very likable. It does make you want to continue to play the game, to play the other heroines' route, to find more about them, especially when you see them foreshadowing some habits that they show that does come into play when you do read their routes. Now as for Arcu and CL's, I think they're great characters. They're fun, likable, bounce off Shiki's personality pretty well, especially Arcu and Shiki when they banter, which is fun to watch, as well as seeing the warm interaction that CL and Shiki have with each other in the tea club room when they're in school, which is also really nice. Both these characters is also interesting with the backstory you find out about them, which revolves around a specific dead apostate, which is very fascinating, emotionally charging as you read what they went through, and see how it drives them now. You can really see how what happened in their past really did define who they are right now. Such as how Arcu had been able to retain her childlike wonder and amazement when encountering something new like going to a movie, despite being a true ancestor that has lived for a long time. How to explain that really does add to her character depth. You get to see the tragedy of her character, which does make you more invested in her, and the same goes for CL. I would say more, but I feel if I do, that would take away from the enjoyment of reading about these characters in the visual novel itself. All in all, I think the route is done pretty well, with it having a moving and emotional story that has compelling characters and some interesting world building that has good atmosphere in it for you to get sucked into. And now we get to the far side of the moon route, which consists of Akaha, Hisui, and Kohaku's route, with this route main story revolving around the mysterious past of the Tono household, as well as with Shiki's past, and how these events in the past will now affect the everyday lives of the people who is living in the Tono household. Truth be told, it's kinda hard to talk about the far side of the moon route without giving much away. This route basically ups the ante on everything we've seen from the near side of the moon routes. While we don't really get more information on both CL and Arcwood on these routes, in fact they don't really appear much on these routes, I have to say that almost every aspect of the story is up in comparison to the near side of the moon routes. The atmosphere is much more foreboding and intense, with there being a significant more amount of psychological horror aspect being in these routes, with there being instances when Shiki himself is slowly losing his mind, and you reading what he's thinking during these segments, which can be really unnerving and intense, and does effectively make you want to read more to find out what's going to happen next, and see why Shiki is slowly losing his mind during certain moments of the visual novel, which is connected to the mysterious past of both the Tono household and Shiki's past. And the mystery of the Tono household and Shiki's past are done rather well. The game do give you tidbits of information of what happened in the past, but not enough that you'll be able to tell what happened at that exact moment, which does prompt you to read more, which does create intrigue and makes you curious to find out more. And it does a great job of explaining why events in the present day was affected by events that happened in both the Tono household and Shiki's past, and why certain characters are how they are, which does make reading to the end to find out the mystery to be worth it. Like for example, you find out why Shiki acted the way he did when he first met Arcwood after reading through the far side of the moon routes. How the story plays out is also a noteworthy thing to talk about, because I feel that the story feels very organic in how it progresses. Nothing really feels forced. Well, for the most part. The events that does happen in the story, while extraordinary, feels like it plays into the story very naturally, which does make you feel much more immersed into the story to find out what's going to happen next, and when a surprising event does happen, you feel genuinely surprised. The characters are also done fantastically. Now Akaha, Hisui, and Kohaku are the main focus in these routes, along with one other special character that has a significant role in Akaha's route session. The characters are just wonderful characters with their personalities already being pretty likable from what you've seen in the near side of the moon route, along the interactions you get for them in these routes, from using the sibling bonding that Shiki and Akaha tries to reforge in her route, to seeing how Hisui is trying to help Shiki as much as she does during the moments when Shiki is slowly losing his mind and being very paranoid, and etc., which already make these characters really endearing. You see more in depth why Akaha is so protective of Shiki. You see why Hisui is as reserved as she is, and why she simply don't want to be touched by anyone. You see why Kohaku is supposedly as outgoing as she is, and by finding out these revelations, you do see how tragic these characters are, which does make you feel for them and see why these characters are the way they are. The characters are just done so well in the far side of the moon route, and really I think the far side of the moon routes is fantastic routes, and the writing is really strong here. To the point where the most intense and engaging part of the visual novel doesn't even get Shiki to leave his bed. Yeah, I don't know how Nasu did that, but he somehow made the most intense moment of the visual novel revolve around Shiki not even leaving his bed. And now we get to the cons of Tsukihime. So what are the problems of Tsukihime? Well, besides its age? Well, I do think that the age scenes themselves in this game isn't really written out that well. They fit more in Tsukihime than Fate Say Not night and not feel the force, but I say the way the writing itself in those scenes is not that good. Another potential problem I feel is, again, how the game is structured. I do feel that you won't get the full impact of some scenes if you don't play the route in a specific order. And as I said before, I think the best order is going through Arcu's routes first, then CL's, Akaha's, Hisway's, and then Kohaku's route. I also got one more problem to the visual novel, and that's got to do with the core antagonist of the visual novel. Now I think that the core antagonists in both the near and far side of the moon route are done rather well, but my problem is that the core antagonists of both the near and far side of the moon route are essentially different characters, but I never got why one was in the near side of the moon route and why another was in the far side of the moon route in terms of cause and effect, which can make the visual novel feel a bit clunky if you're trying to see how the choices you make in the game affect that particular outcome. Now it isn't a big problem as the antagonist in the far side of the moon route does fit in that route very well and is integral to the story, and vice versa for the near side of the moon route antagonist. It's just something I noticed when I was playing through the visual novel. Overall, I really enjoyed my time with Tsukihime. The game has a very strong story that has great atmosphere, interesting world building, and compelling characters that really got me hooked reading through the visual novel. Now there are some weak points to the visual novel, like it really shows its age nowadays, as well as some structural problems, but I still love my time reading through Tsukihime, which makes me very excited to hear about the remake that's in the works, and they could probably add another significant character route in the remake, huh? Anyway, despite that, I still wonder, how long is it going to be till the remake of Tsukihime will be done?